Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Kamran Matin, as you just heard. I work at Sussex University. I teach international relations. I want to start by thanking Sharam for organizing this amazing conference. And my thank is not just as a matter of routine about the difficulty and hardship of organizing such things, which takes a lot of energy and time. But I'm also grateful because I think it's really important to have spaces like this where we can safely and critically discuss potentially very controversial issues. Identity is very obviously emotionally and politically charged for anyone. And for us to be able to talk about Iranian identity, not in a ritualistic sense of celebration of it, but in a critical but hopefully constructive way, I think it's really important, and I think we all Sharam a great debt of gratitude for giving us this opportunity. So on that note, we have our first session on Iranian nationalism. And I'm going to chair this and also the second session, and I will be speaking tomorrow as well. So by the end of conference, you will be completely fed up with me. But that might be a good thing anyway. So I will quickly introduce our speakers. We have Iqan Shahidi. Iqan is a PhD candidate in intellectual history at University of Cambridge. He studied sociology at Baha'i Institute of Higher Education. And he actually did a master's at Sussex, and I had the great fortune of advising him. He never listened, but it was great collaboration. So thanks for being here. And we have also Hadi Mirashtiani. Hadi is an independent researcher in the field of social sciences. He holds a master's degree in social science research from University of Tehran, and a second master's in social studies from Iran Academia. His academic interests lie at the intersection of power relations, social movements, migration, and political sociology. And he's particularly interested in dynamics of domination and resistance, as well as sociopolitical conditions that shape collective action and discourse. And we are also very fortunate to have Professor Ali Ansari to discuss this panel. I don't think we see him at the moment.
He's with us now.
Yeah, I'm sure you all know Professor Ansari. He's a professor of modern history at University of St Andrews in Scotland. He's also a founding director of Institute for Iranian Studies. The biography I have here includes interesting details, including that he was born in Rome, actually. And he studied extensively Iranian history. He's published on Iranian nationalism, as well as op-eds and commentary in major newspapers in the UK, The Guardian and The Independent. So with that, without further ado, Iran. So you have roughly 90 minutes.
Okay, sure. And the PowerPoint?
Have you sent it to them?
Yes.
Yeah. Siraj,
Yeah.
I send you the presentation.
Is that the latest one, or is that sent yesterday?
I'll send you on email.
Today?
Yeah. You answered me that you received it.
Yes. Which one?
Can I stand over there?
Yeah, sure.
Change the slides.
Yeah.
Please, we have the cameras. Look, please do that.
So I would ask you to go to the next slide.
Yes. Just a second.
Hello everyone. I hope you hear me well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So talking about Tabatabai is a bit difficult because he's been a controversial figure, and he has been a prolific author as well. So he has written a lot on different subjects, and I'm just going to explore his thought on the decline of Iran from a very specific angle. So I'm not going to cover all of his conceptual framework. Yeah, so I'm just focusing on his prescription for having a historiography for Iran. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so just to have a context of who has been talking on the decline of Iran so far. So the first people who started talking about the decline was those people who were traveling to different countries, like different countries in Europe, the Iranian travelers. And when they were coming back, they were writing in their travel logs or safarname about the situation in other countries, and many of them they paid attention to the decline of Iran from different aspects. So first of all, we can see this topic, the genealogy of this topic in the travel logs. Then through some politicians in the Bajari period, like Mirza Abbas. So of course they weren't thinkers, they were mostly politicians, and they didn't contribute to the field theoretically, but their practices were based on a specific understanding of the decline of Iran. And then like we see the emergence of the first generation of Iranian intellectuals in the end of 19th century, before constitutional revolution. And after that, like in the 20th century, we see more people working on the concept of decline of Iran, but from a more systematic standpoint or academic way. Next slide, please. So Javad Tabatabai belongs to the latter group. And can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So Tabatabai in his early writings, he was focusing on the concept of tradition, and he was hopeful that probably through the tradition we can go towards modernity. And like he was exploring the traditional political work, intellectual history of Iran, and he believed that there is a stagnation there in the tradition that's not possible to be overcome by the tradition, as we saw in Europe. So we saw in Europe that tradition was like there was a dialogue in the tradition, and the modernity emerged within the tradition, but it wasn't possible in the context of Iran. And after that, also there are some, like as I mentioned, like Tabatabai's idea is very vast and huge. So like I'm just focusing on a very specific part, but it's indispensable to mention that Tabatabai's concept of Iqan Shahidi is very central to his thought. And Iqan Shahidi has like a political feature in his writing. So Iqan Shahidi is a kind of an ideal political system in his thought that goes back to the ancient Iran and comes from the writings at the before Islamic period, before entrance of Islam into Iran or invasion of Islam into Iran. And so it goes back to that period. And Tabatabai believes that the more the content of those writings perpetuated over the history of Iran, the more we had the Iqan Shahidi thought continued and persisted over the history of Iran. But the decline of Iran started from a time that the elements of those Iqan Shahidi thought declined, actually. So the elements of those political thought decline and decreases in the balance of the Iranian thought. And that was due to several factors. That's not my topic, but one of them was the foreign invasions, like the Mongol invasions or the Arab invasions themselves. So the Arab, so the Islamic thought from Tabatabai's perspective wasn't very like enriching the Iqan Shahidi's idea in a way. Okay, can we go to the next slide? But the very important point in Tabatabai's idea is the prescriptive dimension of his thought that I'm going to focus on. So also, this is not very relevant to the center of my argument, but it's really important to know that Tabatabai, inspired by Kozelek, he was talking about different periods in the history of Iran. So he talks about like 3 periods: old period, transitional period, and new period. That each one of them has its own logic, and it could be understood if we understand the logic of each period. And it's not possible if we do not explore the history at the level of thought, at the level of intellectual history. And if we just narrate the history, we would lose the logic, and we can't understand the reason behind many of the ups and downs or vicissitudes of the thoughts in the history of Iran. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so as I mentioned briefly, Tabatabai identified 3 main intellectual trends in the Islamic period. So the first one that I mentioned was Shah Armani, or the core of the Arman Shahri's thought, which belongs to the pre-Islamic Iranian political thought, like the letter of Tenser or Name Tenser, and which has a very specific characteristics or feature, like unity in diversity, its focus on justice, and its focus on the concept of glory of God for the king, or Farah Shahanshahi, and at the same time, he tries to distinguish this thought from the concept of Khalifa or Khalifa in Islam. So he believes that this is like a different concept, which he expanded on it a lot on his book on Khaja Nizam al-Mulk. The second one, which is really interesting, is his focus on the ancient Greek political thought, and he believes that it's very similar to the Iqan Shahidi or Iqan Shahidi thought. This element, this rational element in the political thought of Iran was one of the main reasons for the rise of Persian civilization. And the moment that we see the decline of Iqan Shahidi, or the ancient Greek political philosophy, in the history of political thought in Iran, we see a decline in the whole context of Iran as well. And the Islamic political thought is the third one that he tries to trace back within the Iranian intellectual tradition. So can we go to the next slide? Lovely. So there is a very, like a huge part in Tabatabai's idea regarding the necessity of having a new historiography. So he believes that we need a new historiography to overcome the decline. And just in bracket, that's my understanding, that he sees his own work as one of these like new historiography, and as a, like, not only he tries to understand the etiology or the reasons for the decline of Iran in his work, but also he tries to overcome it with his own work as well, as a part of the solution. Okay, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, there are different elements to his normative or like prescriptive dimension of his thought. So as I mentioned, like he emphasized on the importance of having a new historiography, which really protect a nation's identity, as he says. And he believes that this historiography would help the national consciousness and would trace the national consciousness. So that's the duty of this historiography. It should trace the national consciousness, something that probably he derived from Hegelian thought. But he tries to understand the dynamic of this national consciousness over the different historical period of Iran, as I mentioned earlier. So he believes that it's really important for any like historical work for different parts of the history of Iran to focus on the national consciousness and awareness, and how it emerged, and what was these vicissitudes at different time periods of history of Iran. And at the same time, because he put much attention on the political thought, he believes that it's really important to pay attention to the philosophical and political thought underneath all the like the intellectual or cultural trends in Iran. So it's really important to analyze that because it's like the basic or the superstructure that everything would build on it. So it's really an important part in his work. And he believes that this philosophical or political thought should be also a part of the new historiography that should be emerged as well. And that's why he tries to employ like philosophy or and also political thought in his work as well, tries to analyze the dynamic of the political thought over the history of Iran. Sorry, I have to go very fast because of the time, but I think we can talk about that in details. How many minutes do I have?
You still have time, 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Very interestingly, he believes that if a historiography is going to focus on a national consciousness, it should be born, it should be generated within the consciousness of that country as well. So he believes on the emergence of a new historiography based on the national consciousness of Iranians, or Agahi Milli, what he calls it in his books. It comes out of the self-consciousness of the collective consciousness of Iranian. So he believes at some specific part during the history of Iran, like after a constitutional revolution, or the works of some of the Iranian intellectuals, we can see this emergence of the consciousness, like Khaja Nizam-ul-Mulk is one of them. We need a new historiography based on that consciousness that could trace the consciousness over the history, its emergence and its vicissitudes, as I mentioned. And that's why we need a domestic historiography. And that's one of the main reasons that he negates any kind of other historiography, like Marxist historiography or other methods of historiography that tries to be applied over the history of Iran. And that's why if you read his work, like he's negating all other people's work because he believes that they are emerging in other contexts and they are irrelevant to the reality of Iran. So that's the logic behind that criticism. And as I mentioned, so the development of Iranian national consciousness is something very central in his thought, and decline happened where this national consciousness was eroded or it was diminished over the history. So he believes that like what happened in the Europe was the emergence of like new historical works that they could understand the concept of nation based on their historical context, and they could apply it to the specific like a geographical place of the country. But in the context of Iran, because he believes that Iran is an exception, he claims that Iran is an exception because as he says that Iranian nations was like Iranians, they were a nation before like the concept of a state, even like before the emergence of the modern state, they were having this understanding of themselves as a nation. And I think what he basically, like the most important part of his work in his framework is like those part of his work in the Ta'ammuli Darbare Iran, the first volume, Reflection on Iran, which he tries to show how Iranians, they had this understanding of the integrity of Iran and the Iranianness, you know, from like centuries ago. And these parts of his work is very quoted actually by his followers to show that, okay, this is something very authentic, goes back to the before like nation-state period even. So this consciousness is the subject, the goal, and also the medicine that's necessary for overcoming this decline. And the decline actually is the result of the lack of this consciousness, or yeah. Sorry, can you go to the next slide? So if I want to summarize and have a conclusion, So Tabatabai, in this context, as I talked about him, like I focus just on his prescriptive ideas, not on other parts of his thought. But he believes that historiography should raise collective awareness and overcome the decline. So there is an agenda behind like what he prescribes, and it really impacts his subjectivity as well. On the so if you want to like analyze his work, we see that this agenda is followed in his work as well, and if like a very specific method for exploring history of Iran should be employed and other methods should be excluded, I think all of this like prescription by Tabatabai is based on a very subjective understanding of the field of history, and it's like he doesn't engage himself at the level of methodology with other methods. He's just stating, he's just claiming the importance and the necessity and the indispensability of this methodology for exploring the history of Iran. So that's one thing. The other thing was related to his engagement with the other literature in his work. At different times, repeatedly in his work, he emphasized that no one has worked on this concept, and I'm the first one. And this is the fact that even on the most important topics, on the most controversial even topics that he is engaged, he doesn't engage with the literature, like the I don't know, tens or even hundreds of the works that have been generated before on that thought. And unfortunately, he's the only person, as he claimed, that's talking about that subject from a political thought standpoint or from intellectual history standpoint, which is not very fair, actually. And for the followers of his thought and for those who are advocating for him, really this lack of understanding about the other literature and the other arguments on each one of the topics that he tries to discuss is unfortunate, really. It's really unlucky because they don't have access, because most of the people, when like an ideologue tries to promote his own ideas, they like the followers just read his works and not the other works as well. So this is another thing, and yeah, I think I just covered most of the thought that I had. Yeah, sorry for the fast space, and this was the last slide. Yeah, thank you so much.